So yeah, thanks for coming on the podcast. How do you pronounce your last name?
Jakich.
Yakich? Okay. So yeah, thanks for coming on, and you brought Terry Strand with you.
Yeah.
So Terry, nice meeting you today. Thanks for joining
You're
us on the
welcome.
podcast.
My pleasure.
And it's been a blast since you guys came in the front door, and I always had this funny joke to myself. I'm like, don't do the podcast before the podcast, but it's so difficult. And you guys have so many interesting things to talk to us about, and kind of just on the history side, and just you guys are just two very hilarious people.
Thank you.
So thanks for being on here. And I wanted to ask you, Al, how did you find Rockwell? Because I had never really asked you. I didn't think, and I was just curious myself.
I was going to Costco,
Oh, okay.
and traffic was horrible. So what I did, I avoided that intersection. I came down Clybourne and make a left at the light.
Gotcha.
And I passed this Rockwell Barbell. What is this?
Yeah.
Pulled over right away because like a fly's drawn the shit when it comes to the gyms.
Yeah.
And I walked in. I'm like, oh, first of all, your door was locked.
Oh, yeah.
I found quite surprising.
Yeah.
And then I walked in and I thought, my God, look at this place. It's unbelievable. I mean, Chicago is festooned with all these, the
Festooned.
yeah,
Yeah, look,
with gyms that are just, I mean, there's just
come on,
disgusting.
dumb it down a little.
I mean, LA Fitness is a good example. I mean, I didn't have another gym to go to, so I went to LA Fitness for a while. Every time I went in there, my skin crawled. It's not for me. I walked in here, I think, just like the
He
old.
called me up after he came there. He was aroused. I mean, I found this place. They got bricks and I got iron in it. I go, yeah, switch to decaf, I thought.
Well, you got to remember that, where we came from like the YMCA. We trained at the Duncan YMCA, the Irving Park YMCA. This is when Chicago was the epicenter for Olympic lifting, powerlifting, and bodybuilding. In Olympic lifting, we had Joe Puleo, Phil Grapaldi, Rick Holbrook. All these guys were world record holders. And then in powerlifting, we had Bill Sino, Davey Crockett. Bill held the world record in the bench press for 25 years.
Wow.
In the 198 pound class. What did he do? 580?
587.
587.
With no suit, no belt, none of that
Right.
sissy stuff. We were raw.
Real men.
Yeah, I'm half kidding, but it's
Yeah. And then in bodybuilding, we had Bob Gaida, who was Mr. America.
Yeah.
We had Sergio Oliva, who turned out to be Mr. Olympia. And we had, a ton of guys that came out of Chicago. So this was, and Joe Reeder paid a visit to the Triumph Health Club, which is where I was training at the time, looking for Bob Gaida. And what he wanted to do was offer Gaida a job with his company. They were moving to California from New Jersey. And they wanted to make the Reeder Research Clinic legit. It was a broom closet up to that point. It was all nonsense.
I see.
It was all, smoke and mirrors.
Yeah.
So he asked Gaida if he would come with, and Gaida turned him down. He didn't do it. So we think it was a big mistake. I think we've been better off.
Yeah.
But Gaida got a PhD in kinesiotherapy, and he treated virtually every professional athlete in the city.
Really?
Yeah, he was phenomenal. I had knee surgery, and I'm laying next to a guy, a world champion tennis player. This is, member of the Bulls, the Bears, and guys in the Sox. He treated them all.
Wow.
Yeah, he was an amazing person. And his book, Total Body Training, is still, in my opinion, one of the best books for guys starting out, because he not only tells you what to do, he tells you what not to do and why.
Interesting. I'll have to check that book out.
Yeah, it's a really good book. So, and that's how we got our start.
Yeah. And I remember the first time that you came in, we immediately hit it off.
We hit it
Started
off, yeah,
giving
we
me,
did.
a lot of history about Chicago, and just talking to me about the way that, a lot of gyms still are that way. You just have to find them. But you were talking about all the gyms in the past that you used to go to.
Yeah.
And one of the things that really stuck out to me is you said something along the lines of, we've been looking for a place like this for a really long time.
Years.
And, I know that what we have in here is really special.
It's unique.
But I'm in here every day. And so after a while, you start to tell yourself, like, oh, every gym's like this, or most gyms are like this, And so it was just a really nice reminder to continue to do what we're doing, to double down on what we're doing, because, you know, as things change over time, which I'm sure you guys are more than well aware of, certain things in the culture or in the world make you want to adjust around to the rest of the world, which you have to a little bit. It's inevitable. But as far as the gym goes, I really have no intention on changing the way that we do things here at this gym.
No, what you're doing here is perfect. I wouldn't change a thing. It's machines are the mantra for the modern gym.
Yeah.
And if you know anything about training and bodybuilding or weightlifting, machine strength does not transfer to barbell strength. It just doesn't. So if you get these people going to the gym and they think they're getting stronger, and they're really not.
Yeah.
And you come into here, this tests you.
No,
This
absolutely.
is it. So you know, we've known this since we were kids.
Yeah.
But today, you know, this gym is very unique.
Thank you.
Believe me.
Well, I appreciate you guys taking an interest in it,
I love it.
you know, and
Like I said, if I can help you in any way, I'd be more than happy to.
oh yeah. Well, you guys are doing me a huge favor by sitting here with me and Sean for a couple hours on a Saturday morning. And that's huge to us.
You're welcome.
World's playing in the
I
background.
love it. Music. Keep it
you
going.
know.
That's right. Like you said, it's music to our ears.
Yeah. And, you know, and after you started coming in more and more, you know, not only were you, you know, telling me stories and just giving me all this great information, you also started dropping by artwork for the gym that we started hanging up on the walls. And to us, I mean, that's, you know, it's like one of the most important pieces on the wall, you know, and there's a lot of art out there at this point, but
I have a lot more if you want it.
yeah, we're game for all of it.
Maybe I've got more, my old lady is constantly, I'm like, get rid of it. I mean, I have thousands of muscle magazines.
I bet. Yeah.
Literally.
Yeah. And
Jeez.
can you just kind of hold up a couple of these to the camera? Let us know, Sean, if you can see them. But I mean, we walked in the gym and immediately started just showing us these magazines. And you said that was that the first, there was one magazine, it was the first strength magazine you had, the first edition.
This one with Larry Scott on the cover.
This is your namesake, right?
Yeah, that's Larry Scott.
Yeah.
He said, I said, oh, Larry Scott.
Yeah.
He didn't know he was Mr. Olympia. He didn't know who he was. I thought, you're a gym owner. How can you not know this?
What year would you say that?
That was 1965.
65.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then from this, there's an ad in here for this.
Hmm.
And this was my first. And to this day, this book with 3 workouts in it is still the best routines you'll ever have for guys starting out.
Yeah. That's awesome. Well,
That was
definitely.
1964 this was printed.
Yeah.
We should touch briefly on sort of the short history of the golden age of Chicago Iron.
Yeah.
And it
Love
started, and Al's going to have to help me out here because it's been a while. In 48 at Lane Tech, was that Reeves and Grimmick?
47. June
47.
47.
Well, what time was it?
No,
2:30 p.m.
Steve Reeves won the Mr. America contest in Chicago.
Sure.
And there was a place on Addison and St. Louis called the Mirabelle. And I was in there waiting for some friends, and I'm reading a Hustle magazine while I'm sitting at the bar. And the barmaid comes over. She says, oh, I know that guy. You know Steve Reeves? She says, yeah, when I was a teenager, we followed him from North Avenue all the way to Foster and back. I mean, she said, I've never seen a body on a man like that before or since.
He was the Arnold of the
Yeah.
40s. He was Hercules later.
Steve Reeves became a movie star in 1959.
Hercules.
Hercules.
Zero drugs, still were none around, which is another topic.
Yeah.
Yeah. Sure.
Yeah. So he was in Chicago for that, and the girls were absolutely amazed.
So he was not a Chicago native, but he was here.
Well, he was here. He's originally from Montana.
Okay.
And he lived in California. He trained at Red Pass Gym, and I can't think of the other guy, but he was disgustingly handsome. No, really.
He was a movie star looks, but the broad spectrum is that was 47.
Yeah.
And then in 64, we were at the Mr. America, which was the next huge event. I mean, that was the World Series at Lane Tech, where I went to high school.
Yeah.
And then in 69, Mr. America was held at DePaul.
Yeah,
So for those, 20 years or so, 47, I can't do that math. Let's see, carried a 3 dog years. Well, 30 years later, from 47 to 69. And then that was the end of Chicago bodybuilding for various reasons.
And what year roughly was that?
69 to 70.
69.
What happened there, the YMCA had decided that they didn't want a hernia factory over the Duncan White.
Yeah, they're closing the hernia.
Yeah, Bob Guida was probably the most creative individual we've ever met in this business. I mean, he reasoned that, bodybuilding and lifting should be separate. So he had a basketball court at the Duncan White, 1550 in West Monroe, which is at that time a real shit part of town.
Yeah.
And he had all this bodybuilding equipment that he had guys made. He was the director of that YMCA, so he had a bunch of DPs in the basement, and they all knew welding and upholstery. So made all the equipment in the basement. It was absolutely, totally unique for
Sort of like this gym.
Yeah, very much.
Very industrial.
So, after that, he lost his job there, and it kind of went downhill. And Sergio went over to Weider, and that didn't end well. Weider told me why he got rid of Sergio.
Why was that?
He's, I like I told you, I had dinner with him in October of 2004, and I said, what happened between you and Oliva? He says, I had to get rid of that Cuban rebel. I couldn't make any money off of him. And he told me the time when there was Jimmy Caruso was the photographer they brought in from Montreal to take pictures of all the bodybuilders after the contest. And they had Jimmy Caruso set up with Sergio, and Weider hands a 4-pound can of protein to Oliva, and he says, I want you to cradle it in your left hand, and I want you to give me a bicep shot. And Sergio looks at the hand and says, what's this? He says, well, this is Weider protein. He says, I don't eat this shit. And he said, Sergio, we're going to be sending you all over the world promoting IFBB and our products. And Sergio said to him, I don't take this shit. This is dishonest.
You got to do it with his accent.
Yeah, and he hands him back. And he hands him back the protein can. And right then and there, Weider would figure, I am not going to make any money with this guy. Look how many times he was on the cover of Muscle Builder or Mr. America. You can count on one hand. Look how many times Larry Scott or Schwarzenegger.
Endless amounts.
And he retired as a Chicago cop years ago. Now he's gone for 10 years.
And then he got wind of Schwarzenegger out of Germany. And he figured, this is a guy that I can work with. And he met with him when they had a contest in Florida, and he sponsored him to come to the United States, set him up in California, got him an apartment. Schwarzenegger wanted a car. He figured he was going to get a BMW or a Mercedes. He got a Volkswagen from Weider. He used one.
That's kind of ironic.
He wasn't happy with that at all.
I'm sure. So let's touch a little bit on some of the Chicago gyms from that era that you guys were mentioning. I know you mentioned the Duncan YMCA.
There was only one professional gym in the whole city at that time, and that was the Triumph Health Club.
Triumph.
This one.
Okay.
And this is the only issue that was ever produced in this magazine.
Can I see that real quick?
Yeah, it features our old friend Ralph
22 East Van Buren, downtown.
So this magazine was for the actual gym.
Yeah, they have pictures of the gym in there.
Did the gym produce it, or was it?
At that time, a guy named Chuck Runslow. This gym was started by Irvin Johnson.
Okay, gotcha.
In 1945.
Gotcha.
And he eventually became Rio H. Blair. And I truly believe that if it wasn't for Blair, the protein products we see on the market today probably wouldn't exist. Right. He's the guy that started, the protein supplementation, and this guy, Jim Park, was his first guinea pig. And Jim Park was a rough and tumble hillbilly. And he was working out at Irvin Johnson's gym. And this is what went on back then. I mean, Park would be doing set of benches, he'd sit up, he'd reach for his beer, take a few swigs out of the beer, and then he'd reach for his cigar, take a few puffs off cigar.
He was a manly man.
And that was it. That's the way it was back then. And it was totally unfiltered.
Well, there were, to ask about gyms, there were virtually no gyms. Now there's a gym on every corner, and every grandma's working out. But back in the day, that's early 60s when we started, there was basically YMCAs and Chicago Park districts,
Mm-hmm.
and they were vestigial. They were really not much, you know, a couple dirty mats and a couple benches. And then the biggest was probably Irving Park Y, which is on Irving and down there.
Your gym reminds us of the Irving Parkway.
And why is that specifically? would you
It's
say?
all iron. It's the members. Everybody's serious, and a lot of clanging.
There's no frills and
No frills. It's just plain iron. Get in there, work out, bust your ass, and get out.
spit on the floor, have a smoke.
Have a smoke.
Oh, it was,
Guys used to do that. I mean, the guy that walked into the Irving Park Y one time, and they were having a meet at the Duncan Y. He needed more 45-pound plates, so he brings in some of his gorillas to steal our plates. So he takes the plates and he's standing there with a cigarette in one hand and a can of beer.
yeah, none of this
Oh, there's Mr. America now.
Yeah, no, get that tofu out of here. And the other thing is now supplements are religion. Pre-workout, post-workout, protein powder, protein cream. And back in the day, there was not that much. You might have a can of protein for a few bucks. But one of our other idols, who is 85 years old now, and he's a goat. His name is Bill Ceno.
Yeah.
Most famous guy never heard of. And he was, his mantra was, don't use supplements, eat groceries. And to this day, that's smart. Go to the Jewel and buy cheese, eggs, milk, fruit, veggies, instead of going to GNC or wherever and buying a jug of this, a can of that, and you walk around with it like a knucklehead. So anyhow, but I'm a little old school, I guess you would say.
No, I think you're onto something with that. One thing I always say to my clients when, we just kind of like openly discuss, the way we eat or what kind of supplements we take, is I always say that my eating to me is number one, right? It starts with breakfast right away. I don't care if I'm hungry or not. Food starts going down as soon as I get an opportunity to eat.
What do you have? Typically,
right now, it's I'll have a couple of yogurts right out of the gate, and I'll have a bowl of oatmeal, then I'll have a banana, then I have a sweet potato between breakfast and lunch.
I'm sorry. He and I, we go to White Castle, we meet. You gotta be tough, rough and tough.
I'm happy the closest White Castle is over on Western and 290 because it's hard for me to get over there.
Oh, God.
But no, what I always tell them is the food is always number one, and the supplements, I take them, but I only take them in case there's an advantage. I'm not necessarily thinking that this is the end all be all. I have to have it. It's the only thing that's going to make this work for me. I just take it. I try to be smart, pay attention to what is working, what isn't working scientifically, or people that I really believe know what works and what doesn't by taking it.
Well, a lot of it's marketeering, as you know, and you got to have your micros and your macros, and all that stuff is. Tell Larry about Sergio's dietary habits. Sergio Lever was great inspired.
Yeah.
Arnold said, they asked him who could beat you, and he says Sergio Lever. He was, but anyhow, so Sergio was God. Why don't you take it up from there?
Yeah, Sergio had it. First of all, he was a genetic anomaly, and a friend of mine gave him his first job when he came to Chicago, and he worked in a meat packing plant. And Sergio was capable of taking a side of beef on each shoulder and marching it up the ramp and hooking it onto it.
Not human.
And this guy was from Scotland already. He was a pretty rough and tumble dude, little guy, and he was in the British Navy. And he looked at Sergio. He says, "What the hell does this guy eat to get this, the strength and the size?"
Yeah.
And this is when he first came to this country. When he first jumped the border as an illegal alien, and went to work in Chicago. And Jim snuck into the employees' lunchroom, and here's Sergio dining on, 2 Hostess Twinkies and a bottle of Mountain Dew.
Yeah, he could do it.
It was later. There's a McDonald's at Sawyer in Milwaukee, and I went in there one time, to grab an Egg McMuffin, and here's Sergio in uniform, with his policeman's uniform. He's got 6 Egg McMuffins and 6 potatoes and 2 very large cups of coffee. And I says, "What the hell are you doing?" He says, "You've got to eat. You want to get big."
Yeah. Yeah, and meanwhile, the West Coast guys here are like shaving their pecs and a little tofu. And, Sergio's eating yoo-hoos out of the vending machine. So when I worked on the ambulance as a paramedic in Chicago way back, and Sergio was located 2 blocks away in his police department, his uniform cop. And I run into him at McDonald's, and he'd have 2 big breakfast trays.
Yeah.
I got to get big. And, this is so antithetical, whatever that word is, because everybody else, they're weighing out their food with a jeweler's scale. Ain't it 4 grams of, come on, be a man, chow it down, buddy. You just could turn Dunkin' Donuts into, and this guy was not just big, bulky powerlifter. He had a waist this big, strong as, back in the day, we were expected to lift and the bodybuild. Everybody, you got to be able to lift. You don't have to be a champion, but going to be able to do a clean and press. You don't have to master the squat snatch. And now that's gone. Olympic lifting's totally dead.
Why do you think that is, as far as the crossover between like the quote unquote different sports or the different types of lifting? Because I know when we were talking a while ago, you were like, and I think it was the 60s. You mentioned to me, you said that Olympic lifting was huge in Chicago. And
that's how we met. You met in Olympic Club.
And I know from just looking back on things history-wise, there wasn't a big, huge divide between powerlifting and bodybuilding.
No, they trained together.
And from a sports perspective, even when I grew up in sports, it was pretty common to do bodybuilding, powerlifting, and Olympic lifting movements in the same program on a weekly basis.
Yeah, and that was a secret, total body workouts. And you didn't have to spend all your time working on the Olympic lifts, because that's a career in itself.
Yeah, of course.
But, now the guys, I'll branch off into something, I come into gyms now, and everybody does their entire workout lying down or sitting down. Instead of doing clean and presses or dumbbell press, they got to sit on a bench. What's that?
Yeah.
And, so they leave, and they've been sitting down or doing the whole workout.
Yeah.
And that's really how
a guy who was Olympic lifting, powerlifting, and bodybuilding, their physiques were so much different than the guys who were just pumpers, as we used to call them.
Yeah.
They had a rugged.
That's a good distinction.
Their bodies exude strength in addition to development. That's gone. Unfortunately, what we have today, it's who your pharmacist is.
Oh, for sure.
Which is going to,
Well, Al said, made a real pertinent remark the other day. He said, when we started lifting, steroids were a rumor because they weren't really perfusing out through the bodybuilding community. And, SIBA drug company issued Dianabol in 1958. Okay, and that was the real deal. Well, they beta tested it and it came on, and then there's a lot of history there, but it leaked into the bodybuilding community, and we had known about it, but there were not many guys on it. Now every Tom, Dick, and Mary is on roids. And it's I call them chemical clowns in a steroid circus. Come on.
Steroids got their start with Adolf Hitler. He was giving his soldiers steroids and amphetamines, and the American soldiers couldn't figure out how the hell do these guys keep fighting for like 2 or 3 days straight. And they were incredibly powerful. And it wasn't until the Nazis were defeated, then they found out that they had discovered how to use steroids for their soldiers.
They found their medicine cabinets.
Right. And then the amphetamines would keep them up. But then unfortunately, when they crashed, many of them died, but they didn't care. They were dispensable. And then it was until after the war that some of the chemical companies from America started discovering what these guys had done. They perfected it, and next thing you know, it was Hannibal.
This guy, Bill March, he was the poster boy for steroids.
He's the first one who took them from Rockwell Barbell.
And long story short, Bob Hoffman, the impresario of York Barbell. He was a uber conservative guy, and he financed the York Barbell Olympic team on his own dime. He made York Barbells. So he got all his team to beat the Soviets, the Ruskies, putting them on steroids. And that was, that was the day the music died. And now, I mean,
What's the name of the doctor that
Ziegler, Dr.
Ziegler, Dr.
Ziegler, and he
Ziegler,
was
yeah,
pushing, he was another,
he was their source for?
that was the Cold War.
Work barbell.
Yeah,
Gotcha.
yeah.
So they're all on it, and I just don't get it.
No,
Everyone wants a competitive edge.
of course.
But what
Yeah.
most people don't realize is that, and it's coming to the forefront now. If you take this crap for a long period of time, you're going to mess with the endocrine system to the point where it will not come back.
Yeah.
I mean, I'll give you an example. We had a guy, one of the guys that was training at the Triumph Club, Willie Foley. Willie Foley had pecs like pillars. Incredible black bodybuilder. And Willie was working at Northwestern as an orderly, and he was servicing a number of the doctor's wives while he was there.
Mhm.
And one day Willie woke up with a hard on. No big deal.
I'm sorry, excuse me.
Except it didn't go away for 3 days.
Okay.
And then it disappeared.
You talk about it,
Never
that's
to
a
come
bad
back.
thing.
Never to come back. So now one of the women that he was doing, her husband was a urologist at Northwestern.
Mhm.
So she dragged his ass over to her husband and said, "Fix this guy." And the doctor looked at
We'll be right back before we make a break for a
he said-
commercial.
He says, "I want you to bring in everything you were taking." And of course, back then, he was one of the pioneers of taking all this nonsense.
Mhm.
And the doctor says, "I don't know how you're still alive."
Yeah.
So it took him over a year to get back to normal
I'm sure. Yeah.
on that.
I mean, that's lucky.
I'm 18 years old. I didn't have anything to do with women up to that point. I think maybe steroids are not such a good idea.
Yeah, I can see that.
Well, if you're a high school guy and you want to get a football or wrestling scholarship, you can almost understand. That's your shot. It's
Yeah.
big time. You
Yeah.
have to go to college. Then you take the roids. Not that I approve, but there's some logic to it. If you're coming out of college or you're in college, you want a shot at the NFL,
Yeah.
you take roids and make $50 million.
Yeah.
But bodybuilders are
Egomaniacs.
egomaniacs. It's an addiction, OCD, and they want to be a little, want to put
Yeah.
30 pounds on their bench
Yeah.
and impress their friends and some random judge, and they get a tin and trophy. I mean, pro bodybuilding is a misnomer.
It's kind of funny because in powerlifting, we have this kind of inside joke that, how do I explain it? We'll go through all these extremes, even for a local powerlifting meet. If it's something national or something world related, I understand, it starts to get a little blurry there because if that's your entire livelihood and that's your whole passion, the reason you exist, I kind of understand more if you're going to start to take risks and sacrifices with drugs the higher you get up, just like you were talking for, the NFL. But even on a lower level, if you want to have a national record or a world record, I understand to a degree. I don't personally do that, but we have this inside joke that, for a local meet, we'll go this crazy route with, steroids or, SARMs or whatever it might take to win a local meet or to get a total that's going to get you to a state meet, and so you're putting your body through all this stuff, and it's really for kind of a lower level.
Yeah, it's for a
accolade.
title, a trophy, some tin, a record that lasts 3 weeks, and then it's gone.
And we make fun of each other about it, or it's a laughed about thing, it's a mentioned thing. It's not. And the nice thing about powerlifting is a lot of times it's not a hush hush thing. I don't know how bodybuilding really is, but powerlifting at this point, everything is kind of out in the open, and the people who are out front about it get made fun of.
Yeah, of course.
So I like that that's changed because I feel like 10 years ago that wasn't the case. 10 years ago it was I just sleep right, I eat right.
Yeah, that's very true.
So I appreciate the fact that people are like, hey, this is what I'm doing.
They're being
Judge me for what you will. This is what I'm doing right now. This is what I want to.
Have you noticed how many guys are dying recently?
as far as like older,
Young,
or younger?
Somebody 30-year-old guys.
yeah.
Well, they're not real sharp, you know.
Well, I know that just from following people online, from the sort of rise of the internet, you start to see all these personalities, and I can't name them off the top of my head, but I know there's been 5 that have died in the last 10 years. That
easy. Rich Piana, did you remember? Yeah,
of course, yeah. I don't know why, but the powerlifting community has an obsession with Rich Piana. I think he's so ridiculous and just so
he was out there. He said, "Here's what I use," and Lee Priest and all these guys. But back in the day, you wanted to keep your edge. Well, it was legal back in the day. You go to a doctor, you say, I'm in football, I'm in bodybuilding. Okay, here's your Diana ball.
Yeah.
See, when you're young, you feel you're invincible. All of the guys out here, they're huge, they're strong. They're in their 20s, their 30s, and some in their 40s. We've started when we were very, very young, and now we're old men. And
So
a lot of the guys don't realize one day you're going to get old if you're lucky.
Yeah.
And what you did today is going to follow you tomorrow. And a lot of the guys that are contemporaries, they're not doing too good.
Yeah.
The guys who train sensibly, the guys who ate sensibly are doing very well in their senior years. The guys that went nuts with all this, chemical assistance, they're not doing too good.
Yeah, I can see that. I mean, it's just a fact of life. There's no way around it. It doesn't matter how smart, how intelligent you are. There's got to be some kind of toll on your body.
Once you contract the disease, there is no cure.
Yeah. How did you two meet?
Not
You guys
a
meet through
lifting
lifting?
Contest.
At a bodybuilding show?
No, weightlifting. You see, here's what happened back then. It was run by the AAU.
Okay.
And they would have the weightlifting, Olympic lifting, during the day. And then in the evening, they'd have the physique contest. And the lifting sometimes lasted till 10, 11 o'clock at night. And here you are at midnight, 1 in the morning, and they got a physique contest.
So it'd be weightlifting early on, and then the bodybuilding would be
After that was the end.
Yeah.
It would be an all day thing.
Yeah.
Like people didn't care. Like people like
People just, kept showing up. It was an ebb and flow all the time. They had it the Irving Park Y, the Duncan Y. What else?
There was a whole calendar. The AAU started in December with the pre-novice Olympic lifting, and then the physique after at the tail end.
Mm-hmm.
And then a month later, there was novice,
Mm-hmm.
and then there was Chicago, Park District, and then it ended up in June
Yeah.
with the Mr. America and Senior National Olympic lifting. And it was very neat calendar. Well, that's all way gone. And the guys who ran it were volunteers. They were like scoutmasters.
Yeah.
Today it's all mercenary. And I was lifting, and it is the community. And there was, I went to the lane with 6,000 guys, and I think there was 10 bodybuilders. Now everybody and the teachers and the janitors working out and on roids.
Pretty much true.
But when we started, my kick was seeing how good I could get compared to my friends or in my own body on food and workouts and proper rest.
Sure.
Not going, that was just, and I'm no saint, but it just seemed like, what are you doing? You're familiar with Ed Cohn?
Mm-hmm.
Ed Cohn, a goat. He's the greatest powerlifter of all time.
Absolutely.
Chicagoland guy.
Sure.
He's made nothing on being the greatest. Now, if you're the greatest in golf or tennis or football, you're multimillionaire.
Mm-hmm.
All of our guys died poor.
Yeah, and Tommy Kono, best Olympic, arguably, lifter ever, he died. These guys could not even make a living. I mean, bodybuilding and powerlifting and Olympic lifting is like, what are you doing? If my kid ever went into powerlifting, I go, be careful, because this is OCD. You're thinking about your next workout, your next meal, when's the next meet, maybe take some drugs, and what are you going to do with it? You can't get a scholarship. I mean, I like the idea of, pursue your dream, but it's a nightmare, usually. And while we're on powerlifting, Olympic lifting sort of died in the mid-'60s and was replaced by powerlifting, as you well know.
Mm-hmm.
because it was easy to do. Everybody was already doing benches and deadlifts. And
The transition is already kind of preset.
yeah, and it was a sports thing too. It was good for sports.
Mm-hmm.
Olympic lifting was just oddball stuff. You know, who wants to spend a year developing a deep squat snatch? That's an art.
Yeah, it's a good point that the level of athleticism required to do a proper snatch. I mean, there's so much groundwork that
Oh yeah,
has to be laid down before you can snatch even 135 pounds.
yeah.
I mean,
It's
most
technique.
people are not going to be interested in that.
It's not immediate reward.
Well, our friend Bill Cino, who's the GOAT, powerlifting, bodybuilding, Olympic lifting, he would joke. He'd say, Olympic lifting, that's trick lifting because it's all
The
technique.
physics, because it's a physics
Yeah.
sort of, yeah.
And then to develop an ass to the grass rock bottom squat snatch, that's years really to do. And then you got Clyde Emmerich, who was an Olympic lifter. He called powerlifting unskilled labor. So it was this.
He was the first man to clean and jerk 400 pounds in the 198-pound class.
How much? It's 400?
And he clean and jerk 400.
Wow.
And he was a 198-pound class. He used to train with us at the Irving Park Y.
Wow.
He was, for 30 years, the strength coach for the Bears.
So he was there doing Olympic lifting.
Yeah, he was an
Big
Olympic
building.
lifter. Yeah.
And
I'm trying to snatch one day. I'm 15 years old, and he's behind me, sitting on the bench, and I'm trying to do a snatch, and he comes. I didn't know who the guy was, and he comes over and he says, "What are you doing? Snatch?" He says, "Not where I come from, son." He stripped the bar, and then he shows me how to do an overhead squat,
yeah.
and he says, "When you master this, you come back and talk to me."
Mm.
And
like
I didn't know who he was until a little later. I said, "Wow, Clyde Emmerich helped you out." 15-year-old punk.
little do you know it at
Yeah.
the time.
Oh no! And we had a lot of guys in there that were just. We had Bill Cino. When Bill Cino and Davy Crockett came into the gym,
Yeah.
we left
Yeah.
because those two guys would gather every 45-pound plate in the gym and hog them. And
Little bar out there.
Crockett was like 300 pounds. He was just a beast of a human being, and one of the ugliest people I've ever met too. I mean, this guy was just scary. And
So far we've covered the most handsome guy and now the ugliest.
Crockett was he was
I like that. That's funny.
We could talk about Steve Reeser, like being the most beautiful
yeah. And
human you've ever seen.
so they'd take all the 45s, and then it wasn't worth it. We'd leave.
Yeah, and I earlier you mentioned that you guys met at weightlifting
Yeah.
competition, and that was the AAU, right?
Right.
And
Yeah.
Were you lifting at that competition or? Okay, got it. And I know that you did a lot of those competitions, correct?
Well, yeah, I did about 5 years worth.
Okay.
Yeah.
Can you kind of just give me a background on some of your competitive side of lifting or even non-lifting? There's other type of competitions you did, but
Well, John Gremick, who was the god of, maybe you got a picture of him there in the 40s. This guy, he was all natural, right? He said, be as strong as you look and look as strong as you are and all that.
Okay.
And work out from your nose to your toes. You don't go in there and do 3 hours of incline benches, decline benches, dumbbell benches, pec fixation. So I thought, oh, okay, I'll do lifting and I'll do bodybuilding. And at that time, Bob Guide and all the Chicago guys, that was our philosophy.
Mhm.
Today it's split off. You get the power lifters, and then they split off into bench press specialists, and they enter.
yeah,
And it is what it is. But,
yeah, of course.
and I would compete in AAU, which was the only game in town. There was no Joe Weeder stuff. And the beauty of it was, as I say, they're like scoutmasters ran it. They were teachers and whoever. And they'd run these meets at the Y. And it was just fun. But nobody did it.
Yeah.
It was the
Now, was that the AAU? Was that powerlifting or bodybuilding?
Well, there were bodybuilding
Both.
and Olympic lifting,
powerlifting.
and then in the 65, you ran the first world championship powerlifting, and then they supplanted Olympic lifting.
Sure.
But I always wished that, they dropped the press in the Olympics, clean and press, the Olympics in 72, and
Yeah.
that was the finest. You do the clean and you do the press, right? And it's a total body. It takes 2 weeks to learn.
Yeah.
and it was a whole body, total body, multi-joint. But they got the bench press. Now the bench press, you lay down on a bench, you work it, and if you scan the body, your pecs are lighting up and your frontal delts and triceps. The clean and press, which takes the same amount of time, do 3 sets of 10.
Yeah.
Boom. You're breathing, you're sweating. But in any case, I don't know where I was going with that. What was I talking about?
This is
Where am I?
the only guy that went undefeated in physique competition, and he was also an Olympic weightlifting champion. He was
So he was a true hybrid.
oh, it's
I did have a
unbelievable.
question about that. So you were talking about the sort of clean and press in powerlifting, right? And it was originally squat, deadlift, and there was a clean and press.
No.
Oh, so what was the switch you were talking about?
Yeah, well, when powerlifting came on the scene, I wish they would have not. They would have put in the clean press.
I see. Okay, got
Because
it.
they had dropped it out of the Olympics, so it would have been a natural. And that's really bench pressing to me.
The clean and press, they dropped it out of the Olympics?
Yeah, 72.
because guys are leaning all the way back.
It was
almost
too
like a
really
standing
hard to
bench press.
judge. But it's such a beautiful gym lift. I don't know. Got anybody doing your
Yeah,
bench press?
we had a handful of Olympic lifters that do them. Yeah.
Yeah. And you
So
know,
they had the snatch in the Olympic lifts.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
they dropped out the clean and press.
yeah, it was the press, snatch, and clean and jerk.
Now it's just clean and jerk and snatch.
Oh, I see. I got
And
you.
that's it.
But you know, you don't have to be an Olympic lifter, but you should have the clean and press in your workout once a week, because that's separates the men from the boys. A lot of guys they weigh 300 pounds, they can bench press
Yeah.
300.
Yeah,
It's kind of
I know. What you mean.
it's kind of a garbage lift. I hate
Yeah.
that. I'm gonna get some, rotten tomatoes thrown at me.
This is probably going to be the worst review so far. The best podcast, but the worst review. No, yeah, I knew you were saying. And so you did bodybuilding and powerlifting competition?
I competed bodybuilding,
Bodybuilding.
powerlifting, and Olympic lifting.
Oh, all three. Okay.
Yeah, over the years, and
Well, back then everybody did that.
you had it.
And no, the people in the 60s and early 70s, they kind of went through all phases: bodybuilding, Olympic lifting, powerlifting, and you can tell the difference between their physiques and a lot of physiques today.
Yeah.
I mean, there's a certain ruggedness
Oh,
that takes place.
absolutely. That's what
Yeah,
we
yeah.
look back on all the physiques in the last 10, even 20, 30, 40 years, and we sort of idolize the way those people look.
They were.
Oh, no, sorry.
Excuse me.
Sure.
Back in the day, there weren't so much pumpers, and today they're pumpers.
I know what you mean.
And the Hoffman guys, these guys, they were
Animals.
powerful.
Yeah.
So now you got guys who sit on a bench, they do this for 2 hours and do suppositories or steroids, and I go, yeah, that's great, good job, good decision.
Yeah.
But if you're back in the day, you were either kind of a strong, rugged guy, or you're a guy.
Yeah. I know what you mean. And
It's I don't know, never appealed to me.
when Rockwell first started, it was 2014. And when you guys came in today, I kind of explained to you that it started on Rockwell and Belmont.
Yeah.
And it was in the basement of a factory building. And the reason I was seeking out to be in a place like that is I went to a gym in Des Moines with a buddy of mine. He said, hey, there's this weird spot. It's called 22nd Street Barbell. There's a trainer that works at Gold's in Des Moines. The guy's name's Wes, and I'm, kind of a friend of his now at this point. And he goes, I want to go there and work out. And I said, great. So we went there, and exposed pipes, very low ceilings.
My kind of
Yeah.
Bathroom door had a hole punched through it. So I think someone missed a lift and just stepped the door. So you could go to the bathroom, but
man.
it was good that the hole was high, because no one could see what you're doing in there, but you could definitely see someone's face if they're peeing at the toilet. So I kind of took a note of that, and then I realized that I said, okay, they have a deadlift platform, they have a squat rack, they have a bench, and they have minimal machines or minimal equipment, but it was all the things that you needed, right? And it wasn't the cleanest place. His place now is really nice, for the record, but at that point, it wasn't that clean. Everything.
Those germs that are the challenge your immune system.
System.
This guy, you got little wipes. What's that? Proof. What's that?
Cleaning spray.
Oh, good.
But no, so when I went there, that's what inspired me to start Rockwell, because I was a trainer here in the city, and I was like, well, if Wes can do it in Iowa, I can do it in Chicago with a much bigger population. So I came back and I sought out a place that I thought represented what Wes had. And that's how I found the weird basement spot over there, which is a dungeon. It was in the bottom of a dungeon, freight elevator next to it. Bathroom was 4 stories up and usually never functioned properly.
Yeah, you don't need one of those.
Yeah. So that was how the gym started. At that point, a lot of us who had already been lifting had come from more of a bodybuilding background as far as our training regimens that we followed. And so when Rockwell first started, it was really bodybuilding based, and we were starting to take the barbell lifts a lot more seriously, even though it was mostly bodybuilding. And then as the gym progressed, it got more into powerlifting when this location was opened in 15. And then we went full bore with powerlifting, almost to the point where I feel like we lost some of the bodybuilding aspect over the next 3 or 4 years, because we became, like you said earlier, OCD, or obsessed with one thing.
Yeah.
And then as the gym grew, it started to become multifaceted, because we started getting more clients in here who needed more general fitness. They needed more of a bodybuilding background because they didn't want to get injured, or they didn't want to go through the pain of what it takes to power lift. So that kind of geared us a little bit more towards the bodybuilding side again, because it was sort of a lot of people in here that are being really serious about getting their totals higher. But then we have this other population that's just trying to look good, feel good, and stay healthy.
Yeah.
And that kind of affected us in reverse and got us back to the bodybuilding side of things. And then fast forward, we started to get some Olympic lifters, and then we started to get into strongman. And now we have a fair amount of people that do strongman. We have a portion of the gym that's dedicated to it. And the nice thing about that is that all those people who are into powerlifting and bodybuilding are starting to experiment with strongman movements, because we see these guys doing the Atlas stones. We see them do heavy carries.
Yeah.
We see them do log presses. And then it develops this curiosity in your head, which is a really good thing to lean into it, because it makes you a multifaceted lifter.
Functional strength.
And it's just fun. And as you guys know, I mean, you guys have been lifting far longer than me, but the longer you train, you need to keep yourself interested, and you need to keep yourself motivated, inspired, and do new things. And so it just like creates this really nice scenario for all of us to be like, oh, what's up with that? Like, what's that do for my body? And how good do I measure to that exercise?
Well,
I got an idea for you for your gym.
Sure.
Farmer's carry.
Yeah, you got that. Yep.
Out front, Saturday morning, 50 pair of 50s or 75s.
Yeah.
Just tell them, okay, go south on Clybourne.
Yeah.
Let's see how far you get.
Yeah. Yeah.
And they have like a Twinkie down there.
I tell you what's going to save Olympic lifting are women. I see more women Olympic lifters now than I've ever seen before. Have you ever gone to the Arnold?
No, I've never been.
We used to go quite a bit. We used to go with Gaida and some of the other big time guys from Chicago. And 10 years ago, we had lunch with Arnold with Bob Gaida and a number of other guys. And he says, "Have you checked out the women?" No. He says, "Go over to the next exhibit hall." And it was all female Olympic lifters. And I got to tell you, they were incredible.
I'm sure.
I mean, the women seem to know that they can't muscle their way through it. A lot of guys, you can see these guys, they bend the elbow. You figure, as soon as we saw that, we know the guy's, he's going to miss the lift.
Yeah.
The women were perfect. I mean, it was like
technicians.
Total technicians.
Yeah.
And, Gaida and I sat there for hours watching this. It was just phenomenal. And I thought, well, there's the future of Olympic lifting right there. The women are going to take it over.
Yeah.
So we were very happy to see that, because the guys were
Yeah, but, it's funny. You be an Olympic lifter and spend money for plane tickets, hotel things, entry fees. It's like, what are you doing?
What do you mean?
Well, I mean, you kind of, there's like nothing in it for you. Now, I'm speaking as a guy who loved it, loves it.
Yeah.
But
there's no money in it.
There's no money. There's no scholarship.
You spend all your money.
So, you see on YouTube, a 14-year-old girl, she's got the record on bench or something. I go, well, that's great. You're going to wreck your shoulders and you're going to have nothing. And I don't mean to be negative, but it's more realistic.
Mhm.
You'll get into tennis and
I know what you mean. It's,
I'm speaking as a hardcore
I know what you mean. Yeah.
iron.
It's hard to hear it and it's also hard to say it, but you know, this thing that we love, it doesn't have the outcome, you know, that you think it might have.
It isn't, but it's an addiction. You got your Tupperware and you're eating, taking your
Really
limbs and
changing
shaking.
about it day-to-day life, but I know what you mean. The outcome is not, you know, when you're younger, you think that,
You're invincible.
or the people that you see in these magazines, you know, you kind of create this like fantasy in your head about how they're living.
Yeah, these are
this sport.
superheroes, right? This is like,
You know,
Superman.
some people have done really well from this stuff, but the numbers of people that have made a living off of this, like a true living, are fairly
it's-
low compared
And
to,
if you want to get in the NFL, I think I counted one time online. There's like 82 millionaires, just guys warming the bench.
yeah,
Bodybuilding, if you're Arnold
yeah,
or Dorian,
Yeah,
so
yeah,
you're going to be there. But
yeah,
my mom always said, let the iron be your avocation, not your vocation.
Yeah.
So I preach about that a lot. But there's so many guys who are so addicted to the gym, and I'm a recovering endorphin addict,
yeah,
abuser.
yeah,
Well,
So
we all
there's
did it when we were kids. But
yeah, of course.
well, we've been fortunate enough to live a long life and see the results. I mean, I've had multiple surgeries in the last 10 years.
Yeah,
And if I didn't have the background, I probably wouldn't have made it.
yeah, and it probably did a lot for your constitution mentally, you know, to go through all that
Yeah,
and in
tough it
older
out.
age.
Tough
And
it
if you hadn't gone through what you have in the gym over the years, probably would have affected your life differently.
We're
Probably
here.
much different. Yeah, probably not
Yeah.
even around.
Well, if we had known that we were going to live it this long, we would have taken better
I would
care of
say.
ourselves.
No shit.
As a young,
But showed out of the Yus and the holos. No,
that's
no,
that's the
I-
secret.
And quick story about Arnold. We were at the, this is like 10 years ago, Gaida. Arnold wanted to see Gaida. So we went to Columbus, Ohio, and he says to his son, he says, "This is the man that taught me what a bodybuilder should look like." Because Bob beat him in 1966 for the FIHC Mr. Universe
Wow.
contest.
He won everything.
what a
Okay.
huge compliment.
And he just, I mean, we've got pictures of that. And, Arnold just, it looks like a jelly donut. He doesn't have, and the Gaida is ripped to shreds, totally shaped.
Yeah,
He finally admitted, he says, I blew it.
I don't know if
And here's another one. He came, Weider brings Schwarzenegger to America,
hmm
and he's huge. There's no two ways. He was about 250 pounds.
hmm
And he said, Weider gets Dave Draper, Frank Zane, and John Balick. John Balick used to own Iron Man magazine.
hmm
And he says, take him over to Vince's and get him cleaned up. So, did you hear of Vince Gironda?
Yeah.
Okay, so they take him to North Hollywood. They walk in, and they're standing along the wall, and Vince comes marching over, and Arnold takes the initiative, and he extends his hand. He says, "I am Arnold Schwarzenegger, Mr. Universe."
it's
No,
good.
Vince,
That's pretty fascinating.
noticeably perturbed, stands in front of him. His eyes widen. He looks him up and down. He goes, "You look like a fat fuck to me." And he
Damn.
walked away. Schwarzenegger says, no one has ever spoken to him like that before or since.
Yeah.
But he trained at Vince's gym for six months and did clean. I mean, that's what gave him the shape, the definition.
He trained at Vince's gym.
He trained at Vince.
So did he say that to him because he was intimidated or because he was trying to make him uncomfortable?
He was a
train harder, or what was the purpose of him?
well. Vince
What was
was
the purpose of him saying that? To him?
he was a curmudgeon. Vince was that was his shtick.
Yeah.
Oh,
Well, he insulted everybody.
I'll give an example. I went, my wife and I went to California, and I my poor wife. I said, I want to go visit some gyms. So we went to Vince's gym. So we walk in, and I have a camera hanging around my neck. I'm a typical tourist.
Mhm.
So Vince sees me from the other end of the gym. He's wearing this fall leopard skin outfit.
A leopard skin,
Outfit, this
like a
this-
tracksuit.
it was like a bodysuit. And I'm looking at this guy, And he comes jumping over a hill, and he's jumping over the equipment, comes running up to me, stops an inch away from my face. Says, "You take one picture of my gym and I'll kick your ass."
Damn.
So my wife says, "We came 2,000 miles for this."
Many personalities. Oh, by the way, before I forget,
Sure.
you ever watch videos on hand dynamometers, grip strength? You know, there's a whole culture, but you can get a hand dynamometer. You squeeze it and the thing goes up digital, and then and I would get that. You can get them for $30, $40. Get a good one for $100. Put it on a chain or a rope into the brick, and just you have a little whiteboard there, and you see who's got the grip strength.
That's
and you'd be
awesome.
surprised, but I mean that's kind of cool.
That would be really cool, actually. I feel like that would be a huge hit in the gym.
Oh, it's everybody, and it's free. You know, you hang it up there, and everybody's there putting their name up there and the date.
We had a funny little competition. I don't know if you remember this, Char, a couple of years ago. I think it actually was maybe about 4 or 5 years ago, I guess. But there was a guy in the NFL who put his time and distance up for the Airdyne bike. For
Good piece of equipment, by the way.
It was so horrible. And I can't remember what the time was in distance, but I want to say it was you get 45 seconds or 1 minute to cover a certain distance on the Airdyne bike. And so you put it on the internet, and it kind of picked up, but somehow we stumbled upon it, and we put the exercise on the chalkboard out there. And then a couple people put their time down, and then it just started going down through the gym. There was people outside throwing up in the sewer for 3-4 weeks. But it was so fun. I did it, and I'm not really a huge cardio guy. I mean, I do it, but it's not like my main goal. And I did it, everyone did it, and it was just such a huge hit to see what people's times were. Other people you thought would kill it were awful at it.
Yeah.
Certain people you thought would be dog shit at it had set the best times.
Wow.
And I don't know, I kind of liked putting up little things like that.
Well, it's a cheap way to not decorate, but
I know what you mean. It's an addition to the gym.
in addition, and you put stuff up there. We had it at the Irving Park, at the
pretty sick.
Ravenswood
Yeah.
Y, and it could be any lift and everything,
Yeah.
but it was so cool.
No, I like that as an idea. There was one thing that we sort of touched on earlier, and I meant to kind of get into it, but you were talking about how you guys were at the Arnold, and you went into that part of the festival, and there was the Olympic women's lifting, right? And I know you're a trainer, correct? You've trained for a long time.
Yeah.
I have now I guess I've been training people for probably 13 years, I guess. And some of my favorite people that I train or train with are women, because they're such hard workers and they don't complain that much. And sometimes I feel like they're a little bit more intelligent as far as lifting goes, the way they approach it. And I think a lot of
Sometimes.
you think all I'm only training lightly because I don't want the guys that I train or the guys that I program to hate me. But yeah, it's just a little bit easier. And I think part of it is what you're talking about, Al, is like the genetics are not the same. You know, you don't have as big of a build. You don't have as much testosterone. But I just really like the way that they lift. I really like their approach to lifting. And a lot of times, guys have great technique too, but sometimes the technique that women have is different than guys because
They need
can't-
it.
They need it, and they can't just will things to happen. They
Guys
can't get
muscle
as
things
much-
up.
Yeah.
Women don't.
Yeah, and it's been really enjoyable over the years because when I first started training people, I was more familiar with guys because I had always lifted with men, and I knew myself as a lifter. And then when I first started training women, it wasn't a huge jump. I mean, it's not like it was a problem for me. First woman I ever trained, first lady I ever trained, I think was 75 years old, and never worked out in her whole life. So
Perfect. Yeah.
it was a good starting place because it was not easy. So all the things I thought we could do, as you're probably not surprised to hear, had to be modified, had to be changed, had to be adjusted. And that was
Regress.
and that was a really good thing for me to experience right out of the gate because I realized I'm like, okay, you can't train everyone the way you train yourself, and if
No.
you do, you're gonna have zero clients.
Right.
You're gonna have zero success.
Lawsuits.
And you'll never be able to train athletes. So it really set me up for a lot of success down the road. But yeah, I really, really enjoy training women. I really enjoy seeing the way women lift. I think their technique is really beautiful. It's really interesting how they if you ever watch a woman sumo deadlift, it's going to be different than the way guys sumo
Yeah.
deadlifts or bench press, especially. And so,
welcome to the game.
yeah,
Speaking of sumo,
yeah.
all right, first of all,
Oh shit.
what?
No.
You know, it's kind of, you sort of know. But first of all, you should not allow any.
Shai's about to jump out of that computer desk and elbow drop you here in a second.
Hit the beat button. So, first of all, you should get rid of all straps.
I fucking hate straps. So
Because, and Ed Cohen himself, the greatest, he said, don't use a belt for your deadlifts. I mean, you can use them for a meet or a personal best, but these guys are strapping on belts to do curls off my squat rack.
yeah,
And you know that.
yeah.
And then the other thing is get rid of monoliths. You know what that is?
Yeah. We have 2 out there.
Well, get rid of those. And then,
Those are like one of the most prized possessions.
oh, yeah. And then the other thing is, if you know talking about sumo, remind me of this. The world record in sumo deadlift is done without straps. It's over 1,000 pounds.
Yeah.
It's stood for 10 years. I can't remember the guy's name. I think it was like 1,040.
For sumo?
Yeah. Or any kind of deadlift,
Yeah.
really. But this guy, and he does an overhand grip.
Yeah, he's probably doing hook grip.
And what?
He's probably doing hook grip, I imagine.
You mean with the thumbs?
Yeah.
Yeah. I couldn't tell from the video, but
Yeah.
what a monster. Now, this is how you do it. And these other guys, they got the smelling salts, the cheering section, they're blowing it, bleeding out.
All the powerlifters
Oh,
listen.
it's theatrics, you know. And then,
Yeah, I think some of it's theatrics, and then some of it's also kind of a ritualistic thing.
yeah,
You know how like, certain professional athletes, wear the same socks
yeah.
a season.
And they get
whatever.
slapped and everything.
That is,
Yeah, but they're getting $40 million.
That's true. That's
a year,
true.
You know?
In our heads, we're getting 40 million.
Yeah, you get a large prostate is what you're getting. Yeah.
But no, I know what you mean. But yeah, I think a lot of it's sort of a ritualistic thing, and it does something to you mentally. You think like, if I put my belt on and I have my sleeves on and I chalk a certain way, and if I don't really use salt, but if you use it's smelling salt, now your head is in a certain place to go up to. And sometimes it does work, if you believe something enough, it works. But I hear your point. I don't think that you absolutely have to have all of these things in order to succeed. I don't think it's a make or break. Does it help make you feel good?
I'm half joking.
I know what you mean.
It's the theater of the
Yeah, everyone who wears all that shit knows that it's funny. And knows it's a joke, but it also helps, But yeah, sorry, go ahead.
I was just going to say, raw versus suit.
Yeah,
I puts on Jesus. I mean, I don't know if people know this, but they put on a canvas bench suit, and they got 2 1/4. They can't even get it down to their chest.
Yeah, my opinion on that is, I'm not against geared powerlifting, but what I am against is that if you can't lift well raw, and you're a geared lifter, then you don't have any business geared powerlifting. Only out of respect for lifting. I'm not saying that I think it's wrong or right, but I just think that out of respect for lifting and what everyone has done prior to us, that it's kind of silly that you can only lift certain things in gear. But a lot of geared powerlifters are extremely strong raw too. But the problem with that is that there's a lot of people that do geared powerlifting that are not that group of people. That I've seen people at meets that I know a guy couldn't bench 225 for 10, and he'll bench 4 plates. And he's 19 years old, very skinny, wiry build. And I know he can't bench 225 for 10, but
probably
he
can't squat it either
with a double ply bench shirt. And it's not the end of the world, but it definitely doesn't sit right with me.
It's a purist. We're sort of purists.
Yeah.
Even when it comes to the bars.
Back to the 60s, there were no suits. There were none. Then Dave and Ernie France, if you know his name, he this guy, he can't, how they get into the suit. They can of baby powder and 6 guys.
Yeah, you got to hang in the squat rack off a box and jump into it, get shaken into the suit.
Yeah, and I'm no saint.
Yeah,
that's you get kids in high school. You want to have a raw power meet. Lift. Well, if it's raw, you just here, let's go do it. We'll train for it. We'll have in 3 months.
Yeah,
you don't have to go buy $300 worth of.
Yeah, of course, I know what you mean. it's kind of interesting because earlier, you were talking to me about the guy who, what was his name that was telling you you're doing the snatch incorrectly.
Clyde Eric.
So I had a similar experience with my first powerlifting coach. He was a family friend and a good friend of mine, but he became my powerlifting coach out of just sheer force. It wasn't like I sought him out and was like, hey, I want to get into this. He, the first time he talked to me at the YMCA, he yelled at me about doing an exercise incorrectly. And he was a Polish immigrant. English was not great at the time. So when I only knew he was cursing at me, but I didn't know exactly what he was saying about what I was doing that made him mad. I just knew he was really, really pissed. And what I was just doing a skull crusher, and he didn't like the way I was doing the skull crusher. So after he talked to me about it, I was like, God, I'm never talking to that guy again. So if I see him in the gym, I'm just going to go on the other side of the gym. Well, after that, he wouldn't leave me alone. So he talked to me every single time he saw me for 3 months straight. And then I realized he wasn't going to go away. I also realized he was a very nice guy. It's just he was kind of rough and tough.
It was rough.
Yeah, he was just rough. He was in the Polish army, before he came to the States. Got his arm half blown off, and then became a powerlifter after he had a chunk.
It was black, right?
Mentally, yeah, probably. But a portion of his forearm was missing, and he was one of the best benchers I'd ever met in my life. And he eventually became my powerlifting coach because I got into powerlifting right after I met him, and he kind of guided me, taught me technique, and sort of gave me the mental expectation of what it requires to lift like that. But what was interesting about him is that he was a single ply and a double ply bench specialist, but he had a pretty good squat and he had a pretty good deadlift, but he had some back issues, and so he leaned towards bench. But the guy at 242 had a 650 raw bench, and then obviously he could bench in the 7, 8s, and 9s depending on what ply he had for his geared lifting. To me, that's doing geared powerlifting right. If you have big lifts or a big total,
Raw, yeah.
Raw, yeah. So if you have a big total or a respectable lift, then I think it's fine in my eyes to get into geared stuff, and just it's a different type of powerlifting.
Yeah.
Limits are completely different.
Well, it's all fine, I think.
Yeah, of course,
I'm not here to tell people how to do
yeah.
it, but don't come in and tell me you bench 470 when
Yeah.
when raw you do 270.
Yeah,
Come on.
I know what you mean.
You know how it is.
But yeah, it gets a little weird, and I don't think that it doesn't have a place in lifting. I just think that it needs to be set up in a certain way.
Oh, you're going to have to lead the way.
That's-
You can be the new Vince Gironda. You gotta get a bad attitude. You gotta get out of here, you fat slob.
start demeaning people when they come in.
Yeah. Vince threw out Clint Eastwood in his gym.
He threw him out.
Threw him out.
Why did he throw him out?
Because he was doing sit-ups.
Sit-ups.
Yeah.
He didn't know
Forbidden to do sit-ups. You were forbidden to do squats, and you had to do calf raises with your bare feet.
Why were you forbidden to do squats?
Because he believed that squats give you a big ass, and Vince was all about the aesthetics of bodybuilding. And Clint Eastwood was, and everybody knew because he gave you a list of exercises you were forbidden to do in Vince's gym. So Clint Eastwood's doing sit-ups, and he comes over, he says, didn't I tell you not to do that? All right. So then Vince comes back in a couple of weeks later, and here's Clint Eastwood doing it again. He went over there, grabbed the money from his cash register, threw it at Clint Eastwood, says, now get out and don't come back.
You know what Clint said then? I know what you're thinking, Paul. I fire 6 shots or 300 sit-ups.
This is like 1963, 64, and this is before he became this huge star.
Yeah.
So he jumped into his pickup and he drove away.
So what was his issue with sit-ups that he thought it developed the wrong part of the abdomen?
Yeah, he didn't believe in sit-ups. He believed in crunches and diet.
What was the reason though that he didn't like sit-ups?
He
idea.
said it was more of a back exercise than it was an ab exercise. It wasn't direct.
He was a
Larry Scott walked into Vince's gym the first time. They said, well, you go to Vince's really great gym. He walks in and says to Vince, hi, I'm Larry Scott. And Vince says, so what? And he went on to be Mr. Olympia.
Yeah, he was the Don Rickles of trainers.
It was that very strange man, very strange man. I've got all the stuff that he's written.
I think like one thing that we've realized, because we hit our 10-year mark September 1st. And one thing I've realized, I knew this pretty early on, but I think in the last several years, I realized more than ever how many of us, probably mostly all of us, probably have some sort of mental issue.
Yeah,
Like
otherwise you would be here.
outside of lifting, you know,
Yeah.
and so hearing all these stories, like they're super funny and they're really interesting, but it makes sense, you know, from the people that I've met here that have come through the doors over the years. Just everyone's just so crazy, and there's so many things going on with these people. But in our world, it's just sort of like, oh yeah, that makes sense, or you know, that happened. That's not a big deal. But outside of the gym or outside of these places, like it's very strange.
That's interesting. It's almost like bikers, you know, they're all sort of on the margins, right?
Yeah,
And in the gym, there's guys who are working out their problems and
yeah.
they want to be.
Rock Stonewall.
No, but I remember you mentioning a name to me when we were talking out in the gym a while back.
When I was 13, we used to go downtown, little West Side rats. We grabbed the Lake Street down, go downtown. We pass Eaton's health food store, which is no longer there. The building's no longer there, but the gym was a 22 East Van Buren, and Rock was the nutritional consultant. Now, this is the first real bodybuilder I ever met. This guy was huge, massive individual. Bob Guida and Rock Stonewall were in the Air Force together, and Rock used to steal Bob's protein powder.
We ended up in Thule, Greenland.
So they were in Greenland. So he gets a job at Eaton's, and you know, I looked at it, I says, oh, we got to talk to this guy. He walked in, and he was such a thief. I was 13 years old. This guy sold me shit that gave me diarrhea. And I go back the next weekend. I says, hey, this stuff just, all it did is upset myself. Oh, champ, here's the problem. You don't have this, you don't have that.
Yeah.
He'd take every dime in my pocket. And he was running.
This Rock Stone.
Yeah, he had no soul.
He was
a salesman.
Yeah, he was a pimp.
Yeah, he bought the Triumph Health Club from Chuck Runslow.
Okay.
And Chuck
I thought it had something to do with Triumph from what you had told me a while back.
and
Okay,
so Chuck Runslow bought the gym from Rio Blair, or was Irvin Johnson. So that was the lineage there.
Yeah.
And Rock's side profession was pimp. So when I was working out at Triumph, he had half a dozen of his girls that he wanted to keep in shape for the business. And we had to.
They were working out in the gym.
They were working out in the gym. If you're going to be in Rock's stable, you had
I guess if you're gonna do anything, take it seriously.
Yeah. So he wound up. Yeah, really. So he.
Whatever.
I was so like the quasi manager at the time, and we'd have to block off the.
You were the manager.
Yeah, we blocked off the locker room and the toilet so the girls could work out. And the guys were getting a little pissed about that because it interfered with their workout. So I'm trying to field all this.
Yeah.
So one day, two guys come in. These were the biggest dagos I've ever seen in my life. These guys were enormous. I said, go out here. I said, no, he's not. I said, when will he be here? I said, I don't know. He makes his own hours. He's, going to place. Do you mind if we wait? No. Escorted him to the lounge, which was this vinyl turquoise couch that was all ripped to pieces. In front was a black and white TV with a coat hanger for an antenna. And they sat there for 3 days waiting for Rock. And I knew instinctively, because I grew up on the West Side, why these guys were there.
Yeah.
So Rock calls me up. He says, say, babe. I said, no, I don't want to hear say, babe. I don't want to hear champ. I got 2 shaved gorillas over here in the lounge. And they were waiting here for 3 days.
Yeah.
What's going on? Well, champ, I got to tell you, I got to go underground for a while. He disappears. He gives power of attorney to his ex-wife over the gym. She sold it to 2 clowns for $500. And they moved the gym to Archer in Harlem, Tom Muscolino and George Rumas. So that was the end of the gym. And then Rock goes to New York to get away from the outfit because the problem there, he wasn't paying the street tax for his girls. And back then, Gus Alex ran the outfit in downtown Chicago. And he sent these guys over to find out why Rock wasn't paying the street tax. Rock disappears. He goes to New York. Gilroy Colbert was his brother-in-law, who was the first guy to have 20-inch arms. And he was operating a health food store in New York. And they caught up with him there. This is way before computers, way before any of the intelligence stuff we have today. So then he goes to California and gets a job with Jack LaLanne. So he's working for Jack LaLanne.
And Jack, I don't know if you were going to conclude this, but Jack lent him his Cadillac.
No. Here's what happened there.
Okay.
He asked Jack LaLanne, Rock asked Jack LaLanne if he would co-sign for a 72 Eldorado convertible for Rock, because obviously Rock was going back into business.
Yeah.
So Jack LaLanne agrees, co-signs, and the outfit finds Rock in California to let him know that they found him. They torched the Eldorado.
Damn.
So now he figures, oh shit, and he moves to Wisconsin, Madison, Wisconsin, where he starts stabling college girls and starts pimping them there. They catch up with him there. And then he comes back to Chicago and he tries to get back into the business here. And he's standing on the corner talking to Sergio Oliva. It's like on Howard and, in Rogers Park. And all of a sudden, squad cars come from everywhere. And Lieutenant gets out of the car and says to Oliva, he says, what the hell is wrong with you? We were looking at this guy for months. And you're standing on the corner talking to him. Schmuck. So Oliva's like, he was my old friend, your old friend. Oh, you got some explaining to do, son.
Yeah.
So they were looking for Rock for all of his past sins. Yeah. They arrest him. They take Sergio in another car and they bring him to the station. And they want to know what the hell he was doing with it. Because Rock was dealing dope and girls. So they caught up with him in Chicago and he wound up going to prison. And Oliva could not write the report because he was essentially a functional illiterate. So one of his partners had to write the report. And Sergio, I used to have dinner with Sergio at Fullerton and Sawyer. There was a Cuban restaurant there. He says, I never knew Rock was doing that. And he said, it really put him down in the opinion of the commanders at the station. Yeah. So, and then Rock went to prison. And that was it. Yeah.
Well, I think sometimes you kind of you're just looking at your friend as your friend. You're not really trying to look into things any deeper than that because that's how you know him. It's funny that his name was Rock Stonewall.
His real name was Jesse.
Okay.
Because without a doubt had the best back of any bodybuilder.
So how did you get the name Rock Stonewall? Was that just his character name for?
Yeah, that was real. But the Jesse,
Oh, I got it. I see.
Jumping off of that.
Yeah.
This was a real good friend of ours. Now, this was the handsomest bodybuilder.
Yeah.
His name was Ralph Kleiner, and he was a Chicago cop. And
Ralph got more tail than a toilet seat. We were standing out in front of the Triumph Health Club, and Ralph was walking towards us, and there's a woman that is walking the opposite direction. She cannot take her eyes off of Ralph and literally walked into a light pole, which we never.
Talking about the nuns.
Oh God!
Oh God!
6 nuns came. There was a music school on the 5th floor. We were on the 4th floor. So they got off at the wrong floor and they come storming into the gym. Yeah. And they're looking around and then the Mother Superior goes, oh, I don't think this is the music school. You really boy.
Yeah.
So they leave. One young nun, was totally mesmerized by Ralph. And she stood there and you could see that the fantasies were going fast and long. And Ralph's standing there huffing and puffing and he's sweating from doing a set of chins. And Mother Superior comes running back into the gym. She grabs the nun and yanks her out of the gym. And we never let Ralph forgive that. Even nuns, like Ralph.
There were 6 vocations right there. It was out the window.
Yeah, he was probably one of the best looking people we've ever known.
Yeah, he was a good guy too.
Yeah, and the guy died of embolism. He injured his back competing and lifting back in the early 60s, and he had back problems from then on.
And he went into Northwestern to get it fixed, and they killed him.
Well,
he threw a clot after the
he got a operation and all that. He was dead for half an hour before they even found out.
Yeah.
That was that. And he was walking around. We went to see him. He's walking around. He said, man, I feel great. Haven't felt this good in 40 years.
Doesn't he look like Clint Eastwood here?
Yeah, he does.
He was something else.
Yeah, Terry, I saw on your sort of like resume list that you gave me when you came in, which is really great to see. I mean, there's just so many crazy accolades of fitness related.
I read them myself. It's
it's legitimate though, but I saw that there was one part that said from the disabled to the elite athlete. I just wanted to ask you a little bit about that, so you can give me some kind of backstory on that. Is that about you personally, or is that about people that you've worked with?
Well, that's people I've worked with, and
Mhm.
it's, it's not rocket surgery.
Hmm.
Uh, you take the people where they're at, and you start them easy. You don't need some super tuned up kinesiological. I mean, there's a time and a place for that, but just have them start walking like that lady in the wheelchair I used to train.
Hmm.
So, and then you got the guys who are, I don't really like training elite guys because it's just not that interesting. You're taking some professional soccer player and you want to improve their high jump or something. Just not it. I'd rather take every man, the common man, and get them to their goals. And I like to get rid of them because personal trainers, the way they make their money is sign them up for giant training packages, right?
Mhm.
40 train. No, train them and then set them free. And
Mhm.
once in a while, every few months, you can bring them in for a tune-up. But,
Sure.
You don't make any money doing that.
well, you're right. Because I'm a good Catholic boy. And I don't know. That's all. There isn't much to say about that. But, show them how to work out
Yeah.
and how to feel it.
Well, the nice thing about uh, working with like the common person, is that you can see the results in front of your own eyes every day,
Yeah.
and then you start hearing them come back and talk to you about what's happening in the rest of their life from,
Bingo. Yeah.
It's very rewarding when you
yeah.
have somebody that comes back and says thanks.
Yeah. I mean, I think I probably live for that much more than I realize. I know it's a huge part of my life, but every day I come to the gym, I'm just so happy to walk in the door. I don't care how I'm feeling. I don't care if I'm tired or hungry or sick or something's wrong.
Well, you're altruistic, and it is interesting to be a teacher. And they're feeling better. They lost some weight and whatever.
Yeah.
Yes.
And, it's just the little small things like that, or just people being like, oh, I went to Costco and I could pick up a box better, or like shovel my walk when it snowed and, I didn't really feel that bad afterwards.
Speaking of shoveling the walk, tell me about your experience where you fell on your head a couple years ago.
Oh,
It was probably not it was in good shape. I mean, he's still in good shape.
I went to a birthday party in Princeton, Illinois, which is not the end of the world, but you
Mhm.
can see it from there.
Yeah.
And there was an ice storm, and
Mhm.
it became, I was driving back. I had a carload of women with me, and I thought, oh, Jesus, we're going to get killed. There was carnage everywhere on the highway. I get home, I get the car in the garage, and I'm so proud of myself. I walk out, and as soon as I walk, I platform right on the sidewalk.
Cracked the side.
And I wound up, I got a subdural hematoma
Damn.
as a result of that. And
It would have killed a lesser man.
yeah, it happened January 8th,
Yeah.
and I didn't pay any attention to it. My wife was saying, let's go to the emergency
Yeah,
room.
suck it
I am
up.
in,
Yeah.
Had it.
Yeah.
So a couple of months later, I lose use of my right arm. I'm starting to lose use of my right leg, and my ability to speak is starting to disappear. So I figured maybe it's time to go to a doctor.
Yeah.
So she took me to Rush, and the next thing you know, they throw me in a wheelchair, and they're literally running down the hall.
Yeah.
And the doctor says, I have no idea why you're still alive.
Yeah.
And he said, you're lucky you're old. Well, gee, that's the first time anyone said that to me. Because when you get older, your brain shrinks and it leaves room for the blood. So he asked for permission to perform a craniotomy. And next thing I know, they took a skill set.
Without an anesthetic.
So that's how that happened.
Yeah.
But-
You must have hit your head very hard.
Yeah. Well, the thing is, when you're into lifting that we've been through all our lives, it really toughens you up. There's no two ways about it. I mean, you can take a beating.
Yeah.
And people that don't train, they suffer.
Yeah.
The weenies.
Yeah.
Let's come on. Say it like it is.
I'll give you an example. In 1972, the Olympic Committee decided to reduce the knurling on the Olympic bar because some of the lifters were complaining of scratching their throat. Well, here's the tip for you, Schwa. Don't let the bar hit your throat.
Well, you can always do
So
that.
now, if you look at and the bars you've got, for example,
Yep.
there's the knurling is nowhere near as when we started out. When we started out, like in the early 60s, you grab that bar and it ripped your hands off.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was deep and sharp,
Right.
like it should be.
Yeah, we have 2 bars here that are like that. They're kabuki deadlift bars, and the knurling is intense. So people complain about it all the time.
Keep
But
them out.
it does. It does.
Here,
It does a great job. You know.
Where'd you get them?
It's a company called Kabuki. It's out west. I think they're in Portland. Yeah, no, it's somewhere in Washington. I want to say I'm not entirely sure. But and then there's Texas Deadlift Bar as well, which is from Texas.
Yeah.
That's the big one.
And that bar is fantastic. But yeah, with the knurling generally at a lot of bars these days is a little bit more chill.
I
But
had one custom made for me with my specifications for the knurling.
yeah, Rome Power Bar has a pretty good knurling too.
Yeah.
But after you use it for about a year, it kind of dulls down a little bit. But
How many
You
Schwinn
need to
Airdynes
take
do you
a
have?
file and sharpen them up.
yeah, that's true.
How many Schwinn Airdynes do you have?
We have one.
Well, another one?
Yeah. Yeah, probably.
Take them up on it. He's retiring. And,
Okay.
and
No, I've got 2.
Okay.
I
Yeah.
got the one that I
Yeah.
bought originally in 1980,
Yeah.
and then my brother's when he died, it grabbed his Schwinn Airdynes.
So that'd be a great addition. I wanted to ask you too, just about sort of. Did you guys both grow up in Chicago? I know you went to Lane, so you did. Did you grow up in Chicago as well?
Originally, I came from England. I came to this country in 1956.
Really? So you were born in England?
Yeah,
Wow. Where at in England?
Gloucestershire.
Okay,
It's
gotcha.
in the Cotswolds.
What ended up? Is it your parents that decided to move here? I assume, or did you?
Yeah, my dad was sort of a World War II escapee. He was in the Serbian army, and then he wound up in the Polish army.
Okay.
My mom was Irish, and they wanted to come to America.
Gotcha.
And within 1 year, my dad opened up his own business, a contractor.
Oh, he's a contractor.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
Originally, he was a barrel maker. He was a cooper.
Really?
Yeah.
That's cool.
So
What age were you when you moved to Chicago?
about 9 or 10
9 or 10.
came here.
And you said that you grew up on Madison and Pulaski.
Yeah,
Is
that's
that right?
the area I grew up in.
What was that neighborhood like? Back then, and like, how have you seen Chicago change or the neighborhoods change? Like, what? Just tell me a little bit about your experience.
A lot of cyclists. For example, when during the early 60s, the real estate and a lot of the politicians got involved in panic peddling.
Mhm.
So what they would do is they would buy a house on a corner in the west side or on the south side, and they put a black family in there. So and then they would go door to door saying, well, you see what they're over here. If you don't do something now, you're not going to get any money for your property. So neighborhoods really flip like that. They would went from white to black almost overnight.
Mhm.
And we wound up living there at the tail end, where I was a minority.
Mhm.
So it was definitely an experience.
So they were trying to get the people that lived there to sell and move, or what?
Oh,
what was the point
it
of
was in my neighborhood. The summer of '63 literally flipped.
that? Mhm.
I mean, the population totally changed from white and Spanish to black,
Mhm.
and that was it. So the reason they did that is because then they could sell the property to black families who really didn't have a good credit rating. They had to go through the federal government,
Mhm.
and if they lost a payment on the contract, they just confiscate the property and turn it all over again.
So they could cycle through
Right.
properties numerous times.
It was a real racket. And His Royal Highness King Richard I, Mayor Daley,
Yeah.
got to put an end to it. They
Mhm.
passed legislation that outlawed that kind of crap.
It's kind of
But-
sad because you're trying to give people an opportunity, but then at the same time, the opportunity is to serve yourself.
Yeah.
And in reality, you're just sort of not setting people up for failure, but you're allowing that to happen over and over and
Well,
over.
they set them up for failure.
Yeah.
That was the whole idea. They wanted them to fail because then they could keep churning the property. Because each time they churned the property, people had to put a down payment, and then they had to get a federal loan.
Yeah. So then it was outlawed eventually. So
Yeah, it was. Yeah, the way it did. But the damage was done.
yeah.
And it did it to the south side, did it to the west side.
It was called redlining and
redlining.
blockbusting. And they
Gotcha.
were just
I was going to ask, it sounded like redlining. I've heard that term before, but I've not heard it explained exactly like that. It's a little bit different of an angle.
And the aldermen in these areas, like Tom Keene and some of these other guys, they were all involved in it.
Yeah.
They made a fortune.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, they don't care if they created misery for people.
Yeah, the unfortunate part is that they're ones to sort of oversee the ward. You know, you're the one supposed to make sure that things are operating
Yeah.
well and people are getting taken care of. And, you know,
Who's the alderman here?
let's see, Wagisbeck?
Wagisbeck.
What? How do you say it?
Wagisbeck.
Wagisbeck? Yeah, I'm pretty sure it's him. I think he has an office like,
He's
you're right.
he's over on he's right across the street from Costco.
yeah, that's his office.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He tries to portray himself as Mr. Clean.
Mr. Clean?
Yeah.
Because he's next to a dry cleaner?
No, because he hasn't been indicted.
Yeah, it's the operative word.
So
I was like, oh, I mean, he's next to Greenspin. Maybe that's the
he's
joke.
not. He's not clean.
Yeah, he is.
Believe me. You know, these guys, I mean, I spent 30 years with the Democratic Party, so I know exactly what these guys
Yeah, he voted a couple of weeks ago
Mhm.
3 times,
Mm,
early and often. He's
a
corrupt.
really motivated voter, huh?
Oh yeah, he's registered under dead people in the cemetery.
You know, it's funny people say, you know, how do you know that the 2020 election was stolen? I says, because that's what I did when I was working for the Democratic Party. And people can't believe me. I said, you know, I can tell you exactly how it was done.
Damn.
And, you know, because if you wanted to keep your job and you work for the city, you went to extreme measures in order to make sure that your precinct was won.
I really thought that there was like a punchline coming at the end of that sentence. I didn't realize that you were just being straight up. Like,
It's true.
like this is how you win. Well, you know, a lot of times, anytime you win anything, you have to be hyper aggressive and do some really fucked up things to get
Yeah, I
the
mean,
outcome that you want.
yeah,
You know, speaking of
went to nursing homes and, you know, filled out the form, the voting form, you know, the whole thing. So,
Yeah, it's weird how sometimes, you know, the things that you hear that you're like, that's kind of a conspiracy, you know, or that's just like hearsay. It's kind of weird. It's strange when sometimes that stuff actually turns out to be the truth. You know, I'm not
That's
saying-
how I
it's
met
not
him.
saying
You know, one of the ways when we were in college, she was telling me how the Kennedy assassination was, you know, a conspiracy and the earth was flat and we didn't land on the moon. You know, he was like,
Yeah.
oh, really? And I said, Al, you know, come on.
You know what's crazy is that I have a buddy named Dan who he lives in Minnesota, but he's all over the place because he does film and he's mostly a drone operator for film at this point. But he does all kinds of film. And yesterday I saw he did a post where they were filming the street that Kennedy got assassinated on. They were doing some kind of documentary.
Magruder film and all that. Oh, you're talking about the later documentary. Okay.
So I think they're doing a documentary. They're doing something because they had an entire film crew there and it looked like a Netflix special. It was like not just some couple people just randomly doing it. It seemed like it's like a paid gig. But Megan. And your table is used by Shars right now. Yeah, it's fine. But anyways, shout out to Matt. My buddy who was filming, he was filming using a car, and he was told at the end of the day that the car that they were using was the car that Kennedy was in when he got shot. But they didn't tell them all day that they were using the car for the drone footage. And I thought that was really awesome. And
the Lincoln Continental.
yeah. So so I guess we'll find out what he's filming. You know, it'll come out at some point, you know.
Yeah.
I've seen that car. It was in the Henry Ford Museum in wherever, Detroit or something.
Here's an interesting statistic for you. How many aldermen would sit in Chicago? 50.
Shit, yeah, 50. I was gonna say 100, but yeah.
Of that 50, how many have gone to federal prison for getting their hand caught in a cookie jar?
I mean, probably 10, 15.
27.
27.
So they are a legitimate criminal class.
That's crazy. I didn't know that the numbers were that high.
Yeah.
I mean, you hear about it on a regular basis.
You ever hear of Danny Solis?
Danny Solis?
Yeah.
No.
He's
You heard of Danny Solis?
Yeah.
Yeah, he's testifying against oh God, I can't think of his name. Mike Madigan right now. He was wearing a wire. I went to high school with that guy.
Mm-hmm.
He became an alderman and a thief.
So Danny Solis was the thief or the guy with the wire?
Both.
Oh, okay. So wait, so he got in trouble and then sort of had to wear the wire as a opportunity to get out of whatever shit he's in.
Yeah, Danny got his dick in the ringer with
Excuse me.
the people, and with hookers and other things. And his mentors were giving him Viagra to bribe him. You can't make this shit up. You cannot make it up. So he gets
Sounds so insane.
he gets caught by the G, and then they say, "Yeah, you want to help yourself out? You wear a wire." That's the way it goes. Yeah. You ever hear of Bill Beavers?
No, who's Bill Beaver?
Bill Beavers was a black alderman from the South Side.
Oh, yeah.
Huge guy, great guy too. I dealt with him when I was working for the city.
Yeah.
And he had a gambling. Bill liked three things: women, booze, and gambling. So he used to gamble at the Hammond Casino, and he was a little short on his gambling debt. So he borrowed money from his campaign fund, and then 24 hours later paid it back. The G found out about this, and they called him in, and they said they're going to indict him for campaign fund violations. And they said, "You want to help yourself out? We'd like you to wear a wire when you're dealing with John Daly, who was one of the Cook County commissioners and chairman of the finance committee."
Is John Daly related to the Dalys?
Yeah, he's his brother.
Okay,
John.
gotcha. Okay, gotcha.
So Beavers goes on TV and says, "The FBI wants me to wear a wire against John Daly." Bill Beavers is no rat. I'm not ratting for anybody.
Damn.
And I mean, once you do that, there's no going back. He wound up doing 6 months in federal prison.
6 months isn't terrible.
Well, how many of our own like government?
We've sent more governors to federal prison than any other state in the city combined.
Yeah,
So that's what you're up
it
against.
doesn't make you a bad person.
No, so I mean,
What's that? What do you mean?
Going to jail.
Well, no, I mean, of course. I have buddies who,
It
been through some stuff.
he's in witness protection right now. You're not going to publish this, are you? Because they'll take him away.
We can edit.
Chop it out.
Yeah. No. So you grew up on the north side, I assume. Since
Yeah,
you were
Ashland and Foster, and then I went to St. Gregory's Catholic school, and then I went to Trumbull, and I went back and forth, and then I went to Lane Tech, then I went to 7 colleges because I was just nuts. Because the gym, you got to get to the gym. I just sign up for college, and then I'll work out, and that was it.
And you graduated with like a paramedic.
Well, I got a BS in bio and chemistry, and I got a master's, and I got, I was a paramedic. Yeah, I graduated paramedic at, what do they call it? The hospital, was it Halsted and what?
Cook County.
No, I was there too.
You're not talking about Masonic, right?
Masonic.
Okay.
Yeah. I graduated there, and then what else? I don't know. This and that, and then, I can't talk about it because,
We're talking about obsessions. When I was 15, I decided to join the Irving Park Y. I went to St. Mel High School, which was at Madison and Kildare. And we would walk from Madison and Kildare to Pulaski and Madison, and I would take the bus all the way from Zero, which is what Madison Street is, all the way to Irving Park Road, and then Irving Park Road to Kildare to work out.
it's a long way.
So how long is that bus ride? What'd you say?
About 45 minutes.
It wasn't a big deal to you to do that.
No, I was
It
like we were saying, we would crawl across broken glass to get to the gym.
Yeah, and that's changed to a degree. I mean, there's still a lot of people that will drive or, take CTA to get to places, but especially these days, everything is based so much off of convenience.
Yeah.
And now if the gym is a different neighborhood, then that gym is an impossibility for you to get to. Not all the time, but I've heard people say it. I've witnessed people say it. And for myself, I think I mentioned to you a while ago, but I trained jiu-jitsu and Thai boxing on the side from lifting, but I trained it pretty regularly. And the place that I originally started training at was in Des Plaines, and then they moved to Mount Prospect, and I drove out there for 12 years to train.
Wow.
Doesn't matter what the traffic, weather.
That's right. Yeah.
What's that?
You were
Yeah, just go, and I,
Oh yeah, I see what you're saying. Yeah, it was never a thought of mine. I mean, obviously, I knew I was sitting in
who
traffic,
cares?
but the guy that I met that invited me out there is the guy that I run the academy with now, back here in the gym, and he seemed like a nice guy. And I went out there and trained with him, and he was knowledgeable, and he was easy to be around. and the people there trained seriously, but they were also enjoyable enough to want to go back and spend time there every day because that's just such a huge part of it. But they were also, they were serious. And to me, I was like, hey, this is the place that works for me. This is where I train. And I never thought about it. And so it's just funny for me to hear people be like, oh yeah, I can't train in Lincoln Park, or I can't train on the south side because it's a little bit of traffic, or, the commute's too rough, or whatever, and it's like, to me, it's like wherever the best environment is at, or the environment that works for you,
Yeah.
that's where you need to be. And then whatever you have to do to get there.
And the worse the weather, we didn't care. We walk up Ravenswood, uphill both ways, all the way to the Ravenswood Y. And
It depends on your dedication. If you really want
that's true.
your obsession.
Because it's easy for us to just
It's a
feel for
disease.
no,
You can get treatment for it, but nobody does.
we traveled incredible distances to get to the gym when we were kids.
Yeah.
We didn't even think about it.
I'm going to take a break.
Sure.
But we got to talk about his, your first barbell taking home on the bus, 42 miles.
Yeah, absolutely.
A bolt and a plane and a...
The Majestic Distributors was on Pulaski and Fillmore. It was right across the street from Fillmore Police Station. And they were having a special on barbells. It was $25 for a 160-pound weight set.
Mm-hmm.
So I asked my dad, I said, can you give me a ride to Fillmore and Pulaski? He said, what are you going there for? I said, I'm going to buy a barbell.
Yeah.
He said, what do you want barbell for? I says, I'm tired of getting my ass kicked down the street. I want to get big and strong.
Yeah.
He says, you want big and strong, go to work. Okay. So I had my two crazy Puerto Rican buddies, Benny Melendez and Victor Maldonado. I said, you guys want to help me out, bring a weight set home? He says, sure, on one condition, we get to use the tool. I said, I need training partners.
Yeah, of course.
So we took the Pulaski bus to Fillmore from Lake Street. We picked up a 160-pound barbell set, took it home on the bus.
Oh, yeah.
And took it into the basement, set it up. I stole some wood from my dad's garage, had a handsaw, a hammer, some 16-penny nails, made a squat rack, made a bench. Life didn't get any better than that.
Yeah.
And that's how we started out.
Yeah, you were set.
So obsessed is the word.
Yeah.
And the obsession hasn't changed. That's why we're kidding around calling it the disease, because when guys get dedicated to lifting, they never quit.
Well, it's funny because when you're explaining your story about what you had in the basement to start off with, it's pretty basic stuff, right? It's not an immense amount of equipment.
No.
Nothing fancy, nothing extra, no amenities, nothing.
And you had a wrench to change the weight on the dumbbells.
Yeah.
Yeah, what's that?
Yeah, you didn't have a whole dumbbell set.
Oh, no.
25 or 50 or whatever.
If you want to work it out, you're changing the weights and putting it back.
Yeah, I went to the YMCA pretty early on. I don't know what sparked it entirely, but I remember that I had asked my grandma permission to put a bench press in her basement because she had 5 kids. She had a huge house, and then obviously all of her kids grew up and had families and moved out. She had this massive basement that was just completely empty, and I said, hey, can I put a bench down there and some weights? And I just, me and one of my buddies want to work out. I think she was so happy to have sort of like extra life back in the house because it was just her and my grandpa.
Mm-hmm.
And you go from having 5 kids, and all that
kids.
to nothing, So I think that was the reason why she wanted it to happen. Also, she just cared about me and really, wanted to see me just be happy.
Well, she encouraged you.
Yeah. And she didn't realize what she had did by just allowing me to put a bench in that basement, and we'd put a stereo down there, turn the music up pretty loud. I think my grandpa didn't really like it. He kind of sounds like a little bit like your dad, where
Old school.
Yeah. He just wanted the house to be quiet at night. And, you just go home and go to sleep and wait to work the next day, and she understood that we needed to do an extracurricular activity, and keep ourselves sane. And yeah, we had this little bench down there, super rickety. It was a sand weights. It was a Sears weight set, I think.
Yeah.
It wasn't even a full length barbell.
Yeah.
It was a little like 6-footer.
It was a 5-foot bar. Did you ever hear of Bruce Randall?
No.
Bruce Randall was called the Balloon Man. And Terry and I used to go hear him lecture at Montgomery Ward on Adams and State Street.
Yeah.
and he was Mr. Universe in the 50s.
Mm-hmm.
So here we are, two street mutts. We're going down there to listen to him. That's where I got the idea. I was going to get a barbell set to move like this. This is my first opportunity to meet Mr. Universe. Great guy, really good.
I'm sorry, what was his name?
Bruce Randall.
Bruce Randall.
He was in the Marine Corps. He joined the Marine Corps, and he bulked up to 400 pounds. Set all sorts of lifting records.
Yeah.
And when he got out of the Marine Corps, this guy ate an incredible volume of food.
Yeah.
It was just unbelievable. And when he got out of the Marine Corps, he suddenly found out that his food bill, not being paid by the military, was half his income.
Yeah.
So he decided to start cutting down.
Yeah.
And the way he gained the weight, every time he sat down to eat something, he ate just a little more than he did before.
Mm-hmm.
Just a tiny bit. And before you know it, he's 400 pounds.
It's crazy.
And
Such a massive weight you're walking around
Yeah,
with.
then he went down to, 2.25? Something like that when he competed in
He
the
went 58 Mr. Universe.
Yeah.
He competed at 187. He took second. In the 59,
Yeah.
he gained 20 pounds at about 220 or something.
I got a
And he
picture.
won.
I got a picture of his lat spread.
Nice guy.
Yeah, I'll bring it in, show it to you. Phenomenal.
Yeah, I'd like to see it. That'd be great.
Unbelievable back.
Terry, I saw that you had wrote for Iron Man, Muscle Mag, and then Windy City Sports. Can you talk to me a little bit about that and how did you get involved to write for those publications? Were you a writer prior to that? Or
I always enjoyed writing. And for a while, I was a technical writer in a laboratory.
Okay.
In any case, I wrote some stuff out, some stories, and I sent them into Windy City. I sent it to Iron Man, and they got published. But I was, I wasn't a steady writer.
Yeah.
In any case, it's fun. I mean, I'm still on the internet. I have plugged for my Facebook page, no spam, no scam, no fee, Chicagoland Iron. I've had it for 10 years. Chicago Iron, Facebook.
Cool.
And there's thousands of posts I put up there in the last 10 years, pictures. Unfortunately, Facebook is not searchable like a traditional website.
Yeah.
But I've got everything. I got pictures of him there, and it kind of blurred out, because he's on the run. But that's all quite a history of Chicago muscle.
Yeah, I love the idea of writing something and just sending it into a publication and seeing what they'll do with it, or sending a photo in. I used to be a huge into BMX before I got into lifting when I was probably 8 to probably all the way up to my 20s. And then I traded out BMX for lifting.
Yeah.
But I mean, we used to send photos into BMX magazines, and we would just throw ourselves off a set of stairs, try to hit a handrail. If someone built a 10-foot lip and it had a 40-foot gap between it, we would just send ourselves down the hill and try to see if we could make it over it. And a lot of it was just to see if we could do it, individually, or if one of your friends did it, you wanted to be able to see if you could do it too. But, after a while, we started sending in things in magazines, and, it's like myself, my friends really got into magazines more than I did. They were a little bit better than I were. But it was just cool to see that outcome from what you were doing in the woods in your little hometown could end up in a national magazine.
Well,
it was just in the back of it.
You hit the nail on the head, because that's what bodybuilding, in my opinion, is all about. These guys would sell their grandma for a cover story, a cover shot in Muscle and Fitness or Iron Man or whatever.
Yeah.
And because it's fun.
Yeah.
There's your 15 minutes of fame. They got you Terry Train's arms, and they, it's all marketing stuff.
Yeah.
That's how they, you think of a magazine and you think, oh, it's a big, Daily Planet, Superman. There's many reporters and linotypes. I mean, no, Joe Weider, Bob Hoffman, they have their writers. I call them FTW, fans with typewriters, and they submit these articles. Long story short, they staple them all together. Here's your magazine, Muscle and Fitness, Muscle. Mm-hmm. And it's fun it doesn't cost the
Unfortunately, the era of the magazine is over.
Yeah.
Do you know who John Balick is?
No.
He bought Iron Man from Perry Rader.
Okay.
Perry Rader, when did he start Iron Man? 1935 or something like that?
Yeah.
Yeah, and
way
during
back.
the 70s, they were getting old. We're old, and they wanted to pass it off to somebody
Yeah.
who.
Here is Iron Man.
Yeah.
Old school.
That's the oldest school, yeah. And he, Balick ran with the magazine, and one time he was in Chicago. We were meeting Bill Pearl and a couple of other guys. He said the era of the printed magazine is over. It's impossible. He says, watch. He said, it's all going to go online, and there will be no printed magazines. There's no Iron Man out there anymore. Muscle and Fitness is gone. Strength and Health is gone.
Yeah.
They're all gone. So, except my basement where I hit them all. Oh, God.
Well, the interesting thing is when we buy these magazines in the 60s, somebody like our friend Bob Guida, who won Mr. America in June, every June they'd have the Mr. America, we would wait for a magazine. It's kind of a cliche. Then November, like four or 5 months later, the contest results. Well, now it's instantaneous.
Yeah.
But we would wait, and oh my God, the new one's up there, and here's Bob on the cover, Bill Sino.
I think the thing that happened when things switched over from magazines, onto online is that I don't think anyone foresaw our ability to not be able to read an article or a book would just fall off as aggressive as it did,
Yeah.
And now our attention span is so short that even if I see a snippet online of something that I actually think is interesting, if it's longer than 4 sentences,
Oh, yeah.
I find myself getting annoyed that I have to go through other paragraphs to find out what the headline said.
And the YouTube, too, you see a 35 minutes, you go, well, Ritalin, my friend.
Yeah.
Ritalin, I'll get you some Ritalin, EVD. Yeah, where's our buddy, Bob Guida, who was God. He won every title there was to win. And he was a good guy, good friend of ours.
Drug-free.
He was Mr. Chicago, Mr. Illinois, Mr. Midwest, Mr. US,
Mr. America.
Mr. America, Mr. Universe.
Wow.
Yeah, and he was, he was the essence of, I keep using the term, old school bodybuilding. But what a gentleman, huh?
Yeah.
Wow, I still miss the guy.
Yeah.
His weakness? Women.
It's a strength.
That's right.
He had a wife named Karen Guida, and she was a world champion powerlifter. He trained her, and then, like I said, his problem was women. He just couldn't keep it in his pants.
Yeah. Oh.
Edit that out.
A lot of these guys had that same problem. Ralph had the same problem. On and on ad nauseum about this.
This is Bodybuilding Confidential.
Yeah.
To you every Saturday.
Yeah, it turns out in a 2-hour podcast, and I had to go down to a 45-minute podcast by the time we get done editing it. No, I wanted to ask you real quick before we wrap this up. You had mentioned, you actually texted me a photo the other day, and it was you, your wife, and another guy, and a lady.
Joe Weider and Betty Weider.
And you asked me, you said, hey, do you have any guess who that is? And I sort of looked at his face. I was like, man, my only guess would be Joe Weider, but you're like, yeah. And you kind of briefly explained, how you guys went to dinner together.
Yeah.
And what's funny is that a while ago, I was telling one of the guys at the gym just about you, because I think you had stopped in and he had sort of asked, like, oh, who's the guy we talked to? He comes in here kind of regularly. I always see you talk to him, And I said, oh, well, he's a bodybuilding fanatic, has a lot of history on bodybuilding, powerlifting, and things of the like. But I said, he sort of ran around with the crew of people that, no longer exist anymore for the most part.
Yeah.
And a lot of this information is kind of lost. And they were like, who do you run around with? And I was like, well, I mentioned Bob. I mentioned a couple other people that you talked to me about in the Chicago area.
Sergio.
Yep, Sergio. But I also mentioned that I said, I think there was some kind of connection to Joe Weider, or the people that Joe Weider, were close to Joe Weider. And then you sent me that photo, and I said, I just had a feeling there's just too many names that you're mentioning to me. And I said, man, I knew that at some point it would probably point to him. So how did you end up going to dinner with him, and how did you,
Oh my
how
God.
did you get to know him? And
They had a show called the Club Industry Show.
Okay.
Are you familiar with that?
mm-mm.
Well, it's now defunct, but it was anything and everything to do with the um, gym business and all its ancillary products.
Big
So-
expo.
I used to go there every year, and I ran into Bill Pearl and Bill Casimir. And Bill Casimir was the world's strongest man, absolute beast. And Bill says, "Hey, this is Joe Weider's here. Why? Come on, let's go. I want you to meet him." So by the time I got to his booth, he was gone. He wasn't feeling well, so we went back to the Drake Hotel. So there was supposed to be at Nick's Fish Market, which is a very expensive restaurant. There was supposed to be a dinner in his honor after that. So I had a copy of Your Physique, which was 1947 issue, and Joe Weider had put himself on the cover. So I figured I'd ask him for his autograph.
Yeah.
So my wife and I went to Nick's Fish Market, and we waited for him to come in, and I introduced myself, and I says, "You should do me a favor and autograph this copy for me." He looked at us, "What the hell did you get this?" Because you obviously very well.
Yeah.
And he says to the guys running the show, he says, "Have him come to dinner with us." And next thing you know, my wife is sitting next to Betty Weider.
Wow.
And, Joe is a couple of seats away from me, and we exchanged phone numbers. So later that night, Betty calls me and says, "Joe would like to take you and your wife to dinner tomorrow night." So they're at the Drake Hotel. We went over to the Drake Hotel, and he takes us to the Pumpla, which is in the Ambassador East Hotel. I can pay my mortgage off for what it cost dinner. And it's funny because we ran into, years later, I ran into Bill Pearl and John Balick, a thing that John Hansen was throwing. And John Balick says, "Who paid for dinner?" I said, "Joe did." He says, "How'd you get away with that?" He says, "Joe never pays." He said, "Did for me."
Yeah.
He was a zillionaire, never supported. Sold him to be philanthropic.
Sold his publishing empire to David Pecker, who owned the Inquirer magazine, for $380 million.
And then he sold on that was the publications. Then he sold his equipment and his supplements for another 300 or 400 million.
Yeah.
But he was
If it wasn't for Joe Weider, most of what we see today wouldn't exist.
Yeah.
And, he went to war with Bob Hoffman. Bob Hoffman was very anti-Semitic. He was very, very German, and he hated the Weiders. And they were constantly at war. As a matter of fact, Bob Hoffman hired private investigators to follow Weider around and caught Weider coming out of a motel with Betty.
Yeah.
Mrs. Weider didn't see the humor.
Yeah. I could see that.
well, maybe when you got a second here, tell him about your pretend policeman episode at the Olympia.
Well, my friend Ralph, big guy we show you here, calls me up. He says, "Hey, Alex, you want to go to the Olympia?" I was in Chicago, and this is one that Lee Haney won. And I said, "Sure, but I don't have a ticket." He says, "Don't worry about it." He said, "Do you have a pair of blue slacks?" "Yeah." He says, "Meet me at the First District Police Station at 11th and State." So I meet him over there, and he gives me a police shirt, and he made sure I was wearing black Oxfords. And I said, "What do you got in mind?" He says, "You're the police for the night. You're gonna be doing security at the Mr. Olympia." And I'm like, "Oh, we're not going to get away. Don't worry about it." So we go over there, and he introduces me to the lieutenant who's in charge of the security for the Mr. Olympia contest.
Yeah.
And he says, what district are you out of?" I said, 14. I am lying my ass off.
14's over here, right?
Yeah, 14's at the Shakespeare in California. And of course, I was swiping out of 14, so I knew everybody in the district. "How's so-and-so doing?" "Terrific." I was able to bullshit my way through it. And I have stage left. I am literally 10 to 15 feet away from the bodybuilders posing on stage.
Wow.
So the contest is over. Lee Haney won. Samir Bannout is in the audience, and he's got his new squeeze with him.
Another former
Mr.
Mr.
Olympia.
Olympia.
And his ex-wife had tracked him down, and she's given him all sorts of grief, in the on their seats. And the lieutenant, he points to them, and he says, "Take care of it." And I thought, holy shit. He's going to want me to arrest this guy. I ain't no police.
Yeah.
I'm going to get arrested for impersonation. And Ralph was at the other end of the stage going, "Oh, shit." So I jumped off stage. I ran over there, and I said to Samir, I says, "I don't know what your beef is with this woman. Get it out of my section right now." "Yes, sir. Yes, sir." He jumps up and he takes off and drags this woman off. And I thought my heart was going to jump to my skin. I really did. And then the lieutenant goes, "Oh, good
job."
I said to Ralph, I said, "Let's get out of here, man."
Well, when you were talking about going to dinner with Joe Weir, it just made me think of, there's been a lot of times in my life, especially in the last decade, where I've just, had an idea to try to go meet someone. Whether if I'm in their town, I'll shoot them a message. If I'm at a competition, I'll go talk to them, and I always try to have an open mind that the person might want to talk to me, or they might, want to message me back. And if they don't, it's no big deal. I don't get upset about it. I don't take it personally, but I've always been a fan of trying to put yourself in front of people and you try to, take the leap and just see what happens, because a lot of times you'll be surprised that people do want to interact with you, and they do want to give you a shot, and they appreciate the fact that you're willing to.
Most of the time, guys are very congenial. I mean, I can't say I've ever met a celebrity in our business that was a prick. Most guys have been very, very pleasant. Bill Pearl has been a good example. Larry Scott, wonderful human being, more than willing to talk to you and help you out. It's a brotherhood that is kind of under the radar. And it's made up of some really, really nice people. Really is. I mean, you're one of them.
Thank you.
That's not what you said earlier.
No, it was really, really nice having you guys on the podcast.
Thank you.
I think when the time's right, we'll probably have you guys back on if you'd be willing to do another one.
More than willing.
It was just a huge honor to
Thank you.
be able to sit here and talk about Chicago history, bodybuilding, powerlifting, Olympics history. And it's important, because if we don't talk about this stuff, then it can be lost.
It dies.
And that, I think, would be just a very unfortunate thing. And it also inspires people like me and other people here at the gym to keep doing what we're doing, because it just gives us a vote of confidence that we're on the right path.
You are. And you're doing a great job. This, like I said, I thought I died and went to heaven when I walked into your place. I've been looking for a place like this for the past 40 years.
But thanks again, guys.
Well, man, Tyler, welcome right back at you. Doing a positive service.
Sure.
So we'd be happy to come back.
Absolutely. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Larry. You're the man.
Thank you. All right, Sean, I think we got some.
Thank you, Sean.